Okay, so I think we are ready to get started. So second to last session for the conference. Hope you had a good conference, everybody. So this session is called GitHub Copilot, What's New and What's Next. And it was kind of a working title. We're going to be talking about the GitHub platform and how we're now expanding it in the era of generative AI. But everything we do related to generative AI is called Copilot. So I think it's still kind of valid. So just a show of hands for the audience. How many feel they have a really good understanding of what the GitHub Copilot, GitHub platform is? How it's been used? Okay, so that's 80%. And GitHub Copilot? Either people are not awake or, okay, so 70%. And how many are using GitHub Copilot? So, yeah, about maybe more than actually was know about it. Okay, so just to recap, so GitHub was started 15 years ago, and we started as a way for people to collaborate on open source. So everybody that's working on open source, we say that open source lives on GitHub, right? So everybody is working on open source or want to share code, they end up on GitHub. And even like Google, Facebook, anybody that want to share a project, they do it on GitHub, right? And we started with just sharing code, and then we expanded from there. So now we have like planning, we have CI/CD, we have like collaboration, security features. So now we're a full-blown DevOps platform, right? And we give our tooling away to open source community, and we sell it to our enterprises. So that was our claim to fame, like up until 4 years ago. But 4 years ago, we got access to an early version of GPT 3.0 and started playing with like how can we use these large language models to generate code. So we introduced GitHub Copilot 3 years ago, and that was actually 1 year ahead of ChatGPT 3.5. So we were the first commercial product working with large language models. And since then, we have basically been expanding our platform. And what we are doing now is we're looking at like our platform and how can it be reimagined in the era of generative AI. So you see we have all of these features, and it says like powered by AI. It doesn't say like we have all of these features, and on the side we have AI. It's like how do we bake AI into the flow of the developer? That is what we're focusing on right now. So GitHub Copilot is where we started. AI auto-completion, right? And we have done our own studies, and we have seen that many developers, in our own studies, developers were twice as fast writing code when they had access to GitHub Copilot. And I saw a customer study like last week, and they felt that their developers were 50% faster. So you can argue, is it going to make developers 100% faster or 50% faster? But maybe it's somewhere around there. The thing is, we also know that developers dedicate about 75% to non-coding tasks. So it's great that if we can speed up coding, and let's say we can make a developer twice as fast, that's great. But that doesn't really move the needle a lot, right? If 75% of what they do is non-coding. So that's where we're focusing on right now. Like how do we take the rest of the work that a developer does and make sure that they can be really efficient there as well. So what are those things that a developer will do that is not related to coding? So one of the things is discovering, like does code already exist? So I don't know if you're working for large companies or small companies or large enterprises, but inner sourcing is a popular concept, right? And like being able to share code between projects. And that is really good. And you can spin up an open source organization within your company. And if you have a perfect inner source community within your enterprise, you could basically go out and ask, does anybody have a login set up for this system? And can you please point me to the code you have done? But it could be that the inner source community in an enterprise isn't set up that well. So being able to quickly scan code, ask questions about other people's code, could be super valuable. And explain, I think if you're familiar with Copilot and Copilot Chat, I think you've seen explain before, or analyze, does this code need my attention? But what I'm going to start with discussing is another area, and that is working on technical depth. And in particular, security technical depth. So you can see on this chart here, it's like number of lines written on one axis and potential vulnerabilities on the other axis. And you can see as we as a community is writing more code, we are also getting more potential vulnerabilities. And you can see you can say that these follow each other kind of linear, right? So let's now say that we give all developers AI tooling and they can be twice as fast. They're going to produce twice as much code. Then you can expect the potential vulnerabilities to double as well, right? So that is not a good situation. And then you can argue is the code that is being generated by a Copilot or AI, is it going to be more safe, less safe, about the same? And last study I saw, the code quality and security was about the same as a regular developer. So twice as much code will probably lead to twice as many potential vulnerabilities. So we've been talking about shift left, and shift left is a concept that came out of IBM, and it was something that they said first time 15 years ago. So if we've been talking about shift left for 15 years, why hasn't it been solved? There's a lot of companies saying that now we can shift left and we'll focus on the security on the early parts. So it sounds like this is solved, but we're still talking about shifting left. And the thing is that the problem is that it's a lot of these tooling that is related to detecting security. They do a really good job in detecting issues, but they do nothing when it comes to remediation. So somebody said the industry doesn't have a detection problem; it has a remediation problem. So it's easy to detect, but then it's not always you get the fixes in after that, right? So I've been talking to a lot of customers, and I can kind of divide them into two different groups, or three if I'm generous. One group is the group that hasn't run any security tooling at all, they don't know the state. So I call them the ostrich group. They stuck their head in the sand and they don't really know what's going on, and they are perfectly happy. The other group is a group that has scanned their code. They've detected oftentimes a lot of issues, and they have a large bulk of technical depth that they haven't really sorted out yet. So I call them the insomnia group. They have a hard time sleeping at night. They don't feel good about themselves. And the last, if you're generous, it's the group that has run security scanning, detected issues, and resolved all the technical depth. I call that the non-existing group. They basically don't exist, right? So let's say that, so thinking about this industry and how it really works. So imagine you get a new automated vacuum cleaner, a Roomba, and it starts, you plug it in, it starts scanning your room or scanning your apartment or whatever. And in the end of the day, it's been walking around all day. You feel like this is kind of still dirty here. I don't see a difference. And then you get a ping on your phone. It says now I scanned your entire apartment. I've detected where you have a problem. You need to vacuum under the sofa. Kitchen is really bad. You need to scrub hardware. That you wouldn't be so happy with that Roomba, right? But that is the state of these tools today. They will detect issues, but they will not help you solve them, right? So that was my last slide. We're gonna switch over to show now. So we are gonna start here. So I'm going to start in this organization, and I'm going to switch over to security, and we're going to see what can we now do in the era of. Oh, yep. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So what can we now do in the era of AI if we want to handle this? So when thinking about the security issues, there's usually two personas. One is the persona like the central security team. So they have people like the buys often expensive tools. They will run a full scan of the source code, and then they'll send out messages or communication, say like, we scanned your source code, we've detected you have 500 issues in your source code. Can you please fix them? And the other persona is the developer or development team, and they will they are responsible for fixing, right? So maybe they send out this list of 500 issues, and the developer after a couple of days comes back and says like, well, I took a look at the first 5. 3 of them were false positives. 1 was a kind of a security issue, but I think it's safe, we can ignore it, and I fixed 1 of them. And the last 495 I'm going to get back to as soon as I have a time. And that's probably going to be never, right? So a lot of companies has a lot of technical depth, and that's my point here, right? So what we can now do in GitHub is define something that is called a campaign. So as a security person, like responsible for setting up, being responsible for the security in your enterprise, you can kind of define something we call a campaign. And you can say like, okay, so in this campaign, we are going to focus on all the vulnerabilities that has been detected, either critical or high, in projects that are being released to production. And you can like set this up. You can say like, we're going to run this for 30 days. This is the area we're going to be focusing on. And then you can take a look at like, is this recently balanced? You don't want to send 500 issues to one development team. Maybe if you send 10 or 15, there's a higher chance of this getting fixed, right? So you define a campaign, and then the other persona is the development team or the developer, right? So now I'm in this project here. This is a project that is being released into production. And I have 6 security vulnerabilities, and these are all either critical or high. So as a part of this campaign, I'm asked to fix them. So one of them is a SQL injection issue, database query built from user control sources. It's another name for SQL injection. And I can take a look at this one, and it says like, this is related to SQL injection. And you can read up what is SQL injection, what is a good example, what is a bad example of writing code, what is a good example of writing code. And based on this like general information, I can get a sense of what I need to do. That is great, but you might say like, okay, you've been talking a lot about this, but where is the generative AI magic? And it's right up here, right? So what we have just introduced is the ability to generate fixes and resolve things instead of you like looking at the good example, bad example, trying to map that to your code. We are introducing the ability for Copilot to auto-fix these vulnerabilities. So you saw that Copilot fought here for like 10 seconds and come up with a tweak. So this is how I suggest that you change your code to remove this security vulnerability. And one thing that I really like here is that we can grab a lot of statistics here, right? This has been in beta for some time, and we've been working on like bringing up the quality. So let's say we scan 10,000. So we support a lot of languages. We support hundreds of queries. About 70% of the queries where we can detect issues, we have a auto fix for. So let's say we start collecting statistics. We see that we have suggested 10,000 fixes for SQL injection for JavaScript. We can see like how many of those were accepted, how many of those were tweaked before being accepted, how many broke the build after being accepted, how many broke like the test suite, and how many had to come back and make a different tweak. Or so based on this, we can take a look at the hundreds of fixes where we can provide and look at what do we have really good quality on, and which ones more do we need to work with. So this is really powerful. So I will generate the fix for this. So we have also, when we looked at this, we know that fixing this on average takes 1 hour 40 minutes. For a developer, if we give them a fix like this, they will on average spend 1 hour 40 minutes. With this AI-assisted code fix, it will take about 18 minutes. So for me, this takes 2 minutes, right? It takes me 30 seconds, right? But of course, as a developer, you need to do more, right? You need to convince yourself that this is a good fix, and you need to probably all the tests will be run here. But of course, there's more than just clicking a button and committing. And you see, we will run the scan here again now after we've introduced the fix. One thing that talking about like how we are infusing our platform with AI. I'm supposed to write a message here, right? So telling my colleagues that will scan this change suggestion, what I've actually been doing. And usually what I write here is like, sorry, I don't have time to document this well. Please take a look at the code, and I'm sure you figure it out. And of course, I don't write that in text, but that's kind of the spirit of what I do. I kind of like kind of lazy, right? I've been doing a lot of this coding, and now I don't feel that I have time to write a good documentation as well. But what we have here, and as mentioned, like what can we do now when we infuse AI into our platform, is that we can ask Copilot or generative AI to come up with a summary. And this was just 1 or 2 lines of code, but Copilot was able to describe the fix here, right? And there's another piece here as well, right? So Copilot was able to help me describe the issue. The other piece of this is like the person that is receiving this pull request and is asked to review it. So he will be able to have a Copilot as well, like Copilot for code verification. I don't remember the name of it. And basically he can ask questions. Like so these are the changes that are being suggested. And he can ask questions like, so will this impact performance? He might have a couple of questions. And of course, he can Google, he can do whatever. But with Copilot for like pull request, he can discuss this with a generative AI. So that was the first area that I wanted to show. And we hope with this, we will be able to like bring this technical depth amount of technical depth we have down and start resolving the problem that the industry have, right? Okay, so that was the first area. So let's switch to a different area here. And this is related to what we mentioned, us being able to extract the information from repositories. So in this organization, I have a lot of repositories. I have 110 repositories. One of them is called Employee Handbook. And in this repository, this is basically a wiki. You can think of this as a wiki. And here we have information like related to the Employee Handbook, right? What is our employment? How do we think about employment? How do we think about like OKRs? How do we think about like hack weeks, stuff like that? So of course, as a new employee, I can read this, I can keep track of this, and I can, I always have a chance to go in and look at this, right? And you can have these wikis either as Word documents, you can have them as, I don't know where you have them. If you are on ADO, maybe you have them as a wiki. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have them as a repository. Then you can, of course, anybody can suggest changes, and you can go in and basically have a code owner, and you can make changes, suggest changes there, right? So that is great. Now the next thing I did was I went into this organization, and I went into Copilot and set up something that is called a knowledge base. So you can see I have a knowledge base here called Employee Handbook. And this is basically me saying like, we want to be able to chat with something that should be called an Employee Handbook. And this will map to a repository called Employee Handbook. So this is a simple one-to-one mapping here, right? So then when I go into Copilot chat, I can define like what knowledge base do I want to talk to? And I want to talk to this knowledge base called Employee Handbook. So I can ask things like, instead of going in and reading the wiki, I can ask things like, I'm asked to write some OKRs. Some OKRs. What are those? And how do I get started? And of course, I could read the entire wiki, all this information, but it's kind of neat to be able to discuss and grab information from here. So you can see that, so you can think of Copilot in this instance like a colleague that has been reading all our employee handbook and has a good understanding of it, and will basically base his result in our documentation and in our official handbook. And let's say I go and want to discuss and continue here, and I go slightly off what we have defined in our employee handbook. So I might ask, can you give me some examples of OKRs I can have as a developer? So this might not be in our employee handbook. So again, we will look in the employee handbook. Do we have anything there? If we don't, then we will give a more generic answer based on the knowledge, both in the employee handbook and from the large language model. So this is great, but of course, this is not the main thing that most repositories in GitHub will, of course, not be related to like wikis, right? Most of them will be code. So this was mostly like for a setup for the next thing. And the next thing is where we discuss the same thing with code. We're going to close this one. And I have this repository here called Weather App. And you can see, oops, let me go back here. And you can see that this is a repository. Let's say I'm a new developer to this repository. What I can for sure do is I can bring the code down. I brought the code down here. I can take a look at the files. I can see we have a sample app, we have a backend, we have a front end, we have a lot of things here. And I can start looking into the code. What do we have here? We have a couple of pages. I can start reading the code and see what's going on here. But what I can also do, and let me actually run this, because it's kind of reasonable to run this as well and take a look before we dig into the code. So we'll take a look and see what we get here. We're starting the back end, we're starting the front end. This is the back end. Looks like we have one REST API call, and we have a front end. And in this front end, it looks like we have a nice weather application showing temperatures. One thing that is kind of weird here is that one day it's plus 23 degrees, the next day it's like minus 17. Yeah, and so this doesn't look right to me. I'll switch over to this tab here, and I don't get any data at all here. And instead, what I get is an exception, right? So let's now say that I want to understand this code. What I will do is I will go back here and I will open up GitHub Copilot. And you can see here that this repository is indexed for improved understanding and accuracy, right? So we have basically, just like we did with knowledge bases, we've been able to ingest all of the information here from this repository, and I can ask questions of the code now instead. So let me ask this question. I'm going to ask, where does temperatures come? Oh, probably I should spell better. Temperatures. Where does the temperatures that are shown in the UI come from? Are they just made up? So I could ask a colleague if I had one, if it was a small enterprise and we were just a couple of people working on this and we've been working for a short time, we were sitting in the same room, I could just turn around and ask my colleague. But it's kind of neat now to be able to ask Copilot. And Copilot was able to go in, scan the entire document, and say, like, this is where it comes from. It will basically generate random values between minus 55 and minus 20 and plus 55. So instead of digging into the code, asking question. So let me ask one more thing, and we're going to take a look at something interesting here. I'm going to ask, are we using the latest version of .NET on the back end? And the important thing to look at now is this. Let's see if we get anything. Coming up with a plan. That's what I want to discuss. So how do we figure this out? First, we need to know the version we are using in the project, right? So GitHub will dig in and search in the code base, and then what he should do is go out to the internet, because these large language models, they basically have amnesia for the last year, right? They are not trained daily. They know a lot of things, but they don't know what's latest. So I'm gonna point it in the right direction here. I'm gonna say, like, what is the latest version of .NET? And let's see if it goes out to the internet and searches this. Searching the web. So the point here is that in order to answer some of my more complex questions, Copilot needs to generate a plan and, like, grab data from different locations. It's not just a matter of, like, looking at the current code, but we might need to go into the code base, search what files. I think it's searched here. It's searched, like, what are the different files that are located in this project, and which ones can I use to answer this question. And then ideally he would by himself go out to the web, look at, we are using this version, this is the latest, and give me an answer. The plan, I don't think, was perfect here. I kind of needed to, like, build it up. Let's take a look at what else we can do here. So we have 3 different issues here, and one of them, we saw this issue, exception thrown when trying to view the precipitation tab. You saw when I was switching to the tab, we got an exception. So let me challenge Copilot here a bit, and I'm going to ask, can you take a look at issue number 3? Can you look at the code and figure out what could be wrong? So basically what I'm asking is, please go into the issue, read the issue, then you have an understanding of the issue, go into the code base, scan the code, and see if you can figure out what is the issue with, why we have this issue at all. So you see that he started with going in using the API, grabbing the data, and he was able to find the issue. This is different every time. I'm going to ask him, can you take a look in the code and see why we might have this exception. The thing is, I'm paying $19 a month for Copilot. I don't think I should be doing any debugging. I want Copilot to basically do this for me, right? So so here he was able to find the issue, and this is kind of an easy one, right? So in this page here, we have a throw non-implemented exception waiting for the specification. So it seems like we're, like, halfway there. But I still find it kind of neat for GitHub Copilot to be able to dig in and find these issues for me. Okay, so that is kind of sad. I have this issue in my application. I'm going to switch over here, and I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot chat. I'm going to switch over here, and this is basically the issue, right? Like here on initialized async, we basically throw an exception every time. So that's not a catastrophe as long as we have not released this into production, right? But what I have here is I have an extension, what we call a Copilot extension, where I'm able to plug in different systems. You can see that I have a plugin called production system, and this is basically the production system for the Weber app. So I basically tied in an extension or an agent for my production system, and I can ask things here. Do we have any not implemented exceptions in production? And this will go out to our protection system and take a look. And we see that we started getting a lot of these, some of these exceptions on September 12th. And since then, it's actually been going on. So I'm going to see. So it seems like we have this issue in production. I'm going to ask, like, when was our latest release into production? We're going to see, oops, we had a release, this version 0.5.2 on September 12th, and that's when the issue started. So it seems like we introduced this issue, we've been pushing it to production. Clearly, we should have better like CI/CD setup and with verifications, but you see, the application isn't fully done. I'm going to ask what was included in the 0.5. What was this? 0.5.2 release. And this is what seems to be related. Started on the page for rain data. Okay, so it seems like we got it started. We left the code in to throw an exception where it says like waiting for the specification. So this was not great. But my main point here was GitHub Copilot being able to use extensions, right? So we saw that GitHub Copilot was able to go out to the web, take a look at the latest data if we needed that. He's able to dig into the code, like find issues. He can take a look at the issues that are defined. And you can even write your own extensions, right? And have Copilot basically use what he feels needs in order to grab all the information that is needed for answering a question. And these extensions, I think, are super powerful. We had an internal hackathon where we were playing with some of these extensions, and what came out of that was really impressive. So you can start thinking yourself, like, what could I do if I could create my own extension? So getting started on this is a couple of hours. So you can do that really quickly. And there's, just to be clear here, there's two kinds of extensions. Either you do an extension on the Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code side, and there you can just get started. Everything is there, right? It's released. You can search for the documentation and get started. It will be done in a couple of hours. And then you can also do extensions on the GitHub.com side. There we are currently in beta. So I would recommend you, if you have some fun idea on like data you could use in order for your debugging, you could build an extension like this. Okay, great. So now we are gonna switch back here, and I closed this one, and we close this one. We are gonna. So what I want to do next is actually. I'm actually want to implement this new tab, right? I want to implement these new capabilities, and I have an issue here describing what needs to happen. So I want to create a new tab, like the precipitation tab. I want to create that one, and I want to set up the UI to be similar to the one we have in terms of temperatures. We need a backend, we need a front end. The front end should of course call the backend. And I need to do this in Blazor. And I'm not a Blazor developer, so this is kind of tough for me. But what I'm going to show next is this Copilot workspace. And Copilot workspace is something that is coming out of our labs division, GitHub Labs division. And this is, you can think of this as an experimentation. What is possible to do with these generative AI models? And it's not a product. It's like where can we go and what is possible? So you saw that when I selected GitHub Copilot Workplace. Can you please take a look at this issue or this task that I have and help me solve it? It started with this task. Then it started with taking a look at the current behavior and looked like, okay, we know we need a new tab called precipitation. There's no tab like this. We need, there is a page on the front end but it's basically not implemented and it throws an exception. We need some data classes to send data back and forth. There's a lot of things missing. So based on this, Copilot is able to figure out like, okay, what are the additions that is needed to solve this? We need to implement the backend, the front end, data classes. We need to generate random values for precipitation between 1 and 100 millimeters. We need a data class. We need a lot of things. So okay, so this I agree with this. At least I read this, and this looks good to me. So let's see if we can generate the plan. So what GitHub Copilot will do now is we'll figure out like, okay, based on our project and the files that are there, what do we need to do? So it says like on the back end, we need a new endpoint. We should generate data between 1 and 0. We need a new data class. We need to a wrapper or a proxy for the front end. We need to update the UI. And we need to be able to navigate to this page. So actually, I will add one more thing. I think we need some documentation as well. So I'm going to say like functionality.md. We need a file like that as well. Create one of those, and in this we should document document the new functionality. That is what we want to do. Okay, so this looks like a complete plan for me. So I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot, okay, we have a plan. Can you please help me implement this code? So GitHub Copilot gets started here. He has good specification of what needs to happen to this file. We should add a new endpoint. It should be random values. And this is the code that comes out. So you can see that this is the old one, right? We had summaries, freezing, bracing, and we had random values between -20 and +55. And this is basically the new functionality based on my specification. We generate the inches. I didn't tell it. Please, when you generate inches, please divide by 25.4. I didn't say that anywhere. He defined the data class. He defined a backend proxy, so that we can call it. He generated the full UI for me. He removed this non-implemented exception and generated this functionality MD file. So this looks pretty good to me. One thing that I'm going to ask it to change one more thing. So these summaries here, let me ask for one different thing. The summaries should have 5 different values. Each value should have a matching emoji. I think we need some emojis here as well, right? Because it doesn't look fun with this just text here. So let me ask GitHub Copilot to regenerate this web, and let's see if we can get some emojis in there as well. I selected a file, said this is the one we need to regenerate. And let's take a look at what we get. Yeah, so it was able to follow my instructions, and now we have summaries with emojis. Great. So let me generate a pull request for this. I'm going to call this tab Swetugg. I'm going to generate a pull request. And let's go from there. How many have you guys seen Copilot workspaces before? Hands up. You've seen it? You've seen it? Okay. Okay, so I will go to the pull request here. And these are basically the files that I changed. We generated a nice functionality thing. We generated the new backend with the summaries that I asked for. Nice matching emojis. The data class was implemented. This looks pretty good to me. It even fixed the spelling issue that I didn't even know I had here. Great. So I'm not a Blazor developer. So how long do you think it would have taken me or like you as developers to implement this functionality? So let's set the middle for 4 hours. So we're gonna do like much less than 4 hours. 4 hours and much more than 4 hours. So who thinks that they or I or somebody with decent knowledge would be able to do this in less than 4 hours? Okay, maybe a quarter. About 4 hours. Fewer? More than 4 hours? A few. Okay, so I think the consensus is less than 4 hours. But yeah, so you guys are clearly faster than me. So even just picking the right emojis here, knowing myself, just picking the right emojis here would have taken me like 20 minutes. But you might be faster than me. Okay, so we have pushed this. Let's now take a look at this, if this is actually working. So still, I was able to, did I get this one? Swetugg. So still, I think it was pretty impressive. I was able, let's say because this is 3 hours, I was able to get 3 hours worth work done in, was it 5 minutes? Pretty good, I think. This is the functionality file. Let's take a look. Yeah, it looks good. I think it looks good. Overview, front-end changes. Yes, this one would have taken me half a day. Let's try it out. Hopefully this will work as well. This works in about 90% of the times I do it. So hopefully we're lucky today. We have a front end. We switch to the precipitation. And yeah, we basically doubled the functionality of this application in 5 minutes. One thing that I don't like is this, right? We have way too many decimals here. So let's see if we can fix this. Let me stop here. And let's, so this is the front end. This is probably the new code. Like we're listing the precipitation, and this one I want to display in just with 1 decimal. So what are my choices here? I could read a book if I want to like understand what I should do. I could Google. One issue with Googling and trying to understand this is that I don't have a good understanding what I'm actually working with here, right? This is Blazor. Should I Google for like how do I set one decimal values in .NET? What I don't even know what to Google for here. Or should I ask for Blazor? So what should I do? Well, as a modern developer, I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot inline to take a look at this. So I'm going to say like inches should only be displayed with 1 decimal. And GitHub Copilot will make a change. This might be correct. If I wanted to, I could, of course, go in and say like, hey, GitHub Copilot, can you please explain this to me? I think I need to at least understand this before I check it in. And GitHub Copilot will basically give me an explanation. This is way too small. And it will tell me like what it's doing. But let's give it a try as well here and see if we actually got the correct result that we wanted. The back end looks good, the front end, and we have 1 decimal here. So that is actually the last thing that I wanted to show. So I was asked by some colleagues to show this last slide as well. The Microsoft AI Tour. So this is something that is happening in Gothenburg and Stockholm in just a couple of weeks or a month. So I think the sign up is free. So you can think about joining that one. So yeah, we have some minutes more. Any questions or comments, or if not, we're done. So we're done, and if you wanna stay and ask questions, feel free.